Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're hailing from. Welcome to the Developer Experience Office Hour here on Red Hat Live Streaming. I am Chris Short, host and showrunner is the proper TV title, I've been told. I'm joined today by Dewan Ahmed and Eric Deandrea. We're going to have an awesome time with fruit, apparently. I'm curious how this is going to go, Dewan. Please introduce yourself for the audience and tell us what we're doing today.
Absolutely. So my name is Dewan, and I'm joining you from the beautiful New Brunswick, which is in the eastern part of Canada. And we'll have some fun with fruits. What's your favorite fruit, Chris?
Oh, gosh, probably. Oh, man, that's tough. Favorite fruit? Probably oranges or blueberries.
So one of those enriched high in vitamin C ones then.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Okay.
Like a lot of antioxidants, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Okay, going to Eric then for his intro and favorite fruit.
My favorite, so good. Like Chris said, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever it is that you are. I'm Eric Deandrea. Like Dewan, I'm not in Canada, but just below him. I'm in the great state of New Hampshire, Granite State. My favorite fruit, I like watermelon, especially this time of year. It's been really good.
Good choice.
We buy a lot of watermelon, and it's been really, really good this year.
Perfect.
Hard to find in the wintertime, though.
So Chris, do you know about this game where you chop the fruits with a sword?
Yeah, my daughter played that quite a bit when it was popular. Yeah.
So someone told me Eric has a black belt.
Wow.
I do have a black belt in martial arts.
Wow. Okay.
Wow. So
I'm not just a tech geek. I can actually do stuff.
So we have a ninja on the show.
Really? Does will he disappear and reemerge in other places? I mean, what kind of ninja?
Maybe if the demo doesn't work.
He'll disappear and then reappear, not on air.
My monitor screen right now actually looks like I threw a Chinese star at it. It's got a big spider web crack through it, and I have no idea how it happened. So,
that's rough.
Yeah.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, that was my Monday morning, and of course the kids didn't do it.
No, this is why you only have one kid, because you know who always does it.
Well, you're the big kid, right? You got all the toys,
right? But to be honest with you, most of the toys back there are for my 5-year-old's enjoyment.
So you just don't allow him anywhere near him, because you.
No, he can totally grab whatever he wants off the shelf, but the problem is there's just a lot of crap in front of it. So yeah, let's this is kind of the first developer experience office hour we've had in a while. So, apologize, think life has happened. It's summer, all these other things. Hell, we had storms rolling through here this weekend that left me without power for almost 48 hours. So, there's a lot going on. And Dewan is new to the team, and this is his first office hour of sorts. So, at least live here. So thank you for joining us, Dewan. We really appreciate you. Yeah, thank you.
It's a pleasure.
And we were chatting a little bit beforehand too. This is kind of how we feel every day, right?
Yes. Especially today, after not having access to anything like cell servers, power, internet, anything yesterday, coming to work today is that right there.
Yeah. This is kind of how you want it to be,
right. Yes, very nice. The world in harmony kind of thing. Yeah. But instead it's just T-Rex chasing.
Even if we don't know, sometimes we're the T-Rex and we're probably chasing someone else. We always think that we're the person on that Jeep, right?
Yeah, exactly. Awesome.
Okay, so what are we going to talk about today?
Well, you tell me. Something about
since we started the show with talking about fruits. Mm-hmm. So maybe let's talk about fruits, but how to build a fruits app, maybe.
All right. So you're doing this on your own cluster? This is not a lab. Okay, cool. Yeah, just making sure.
Yeah. So let me start by sharing my screen, and if you can see my cool T-shirt, that's the only Java T-shirt I could find in my wardrobe. So we're gonna build something with Spring Framework,
Awesome.
and we will deploy the app on OpenShift. But the good thing is, what we're gonna show you today, you don't have to have access to an OpenShift cluster. So let me start by sharing my screen.
I was going to add on while he's doing that is that he mentioned it's his only, cool T-shirt, the only clean, cool T-shirt.
Yes, to be clear, right? Like
very
cleanliness.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's all like sprayed with hand sanitizer, so it's very clean and. Okay, so I think you can see the link on the screen, learn.openshift.com, but my friend can also add this link on the chat or comments or however you're seeing this.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So learn.openshift.com. Actually, let me go to the main page so you can also see how to navigate here. And there's tons of scenarios for different topics. But today's topic is developing with Spring and Spring Boot. So if you click that tab right here, you get 6 scenarios. Let's start with the first one, getting started with Spring. If you click on Start the Scenario, this setup runs on an OpenShift cluster, which is not your OpenShift cluster. This is provided for you as a sandbox. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, this is live for 60 minutes, but that should be more than enough to complete this scenario. If you somehow can't complete in time, you can refresh and you can have access to one more 60 minutes environment. So once you start this scenario, some magic happens in the background. So basically, it installs some required software, and once you see this ready, you can start the scenario. One of the cool thing with that is you can type in the command, but you can also click and execute. So for example, if I do an ls-la, I don't have anything here. So first step is you have to clone the repository. So if I click that, bam, it clones the repository. Let's see, now I have a typical looking Java project with pom.xml. Let me clear up the screen, maybe put it on top. Nope, not there. Yep, like that. And if I do a tree, I can see the file structure, folder, and all the file structure as well. All right, so that's all nice and great. Let's look at the pom.xml. So if we look at the pom.xml, you'll see typical pom.xml with some to-do. So these to-dos are stuff that we would like you to add yourself, just to get used to the scenario and do the scenario yourself. But majority of the stuff are already added for you. So this is more like a template, and you add only the missing pieces. Again, all these things you can type by hand, but because we don't want to do that, we can do just click and execute. So if you come here, this section, you see a nice copy to editor button. Watch line number 59. So this is the dependency for Spring Boot Starter Web, the web dependency. If I click here, there, you have that dependency added. So that's the very first of the dependency, just to even run the application. We'll add the other dependencies, but for the first step, you don't need anything else. You can click Maven Spring Boot Run, and it starts running. So this is
after Maven downloads the internet.
Yes, that's what I wanted to say. If you actually, the introduction we had, we could have the introduction right now. How's everything? The state of world, whatever you wanted to chat. Probably now is the time when Maven downloads the internet.
So let's discuss how much of the internet is actually downloading. I mean, hundreds of megs, gigs.
It's probably, I mean, if you think about, you take a Spring Boot app and you package it into an Uber jar, it's what, 100 megs, between 60 and 100 megs somewhere.
And yeah, we were just overestimating the runtime, because I think it was like 7 or 8 seconds till we made the joke. See, the JVM running for 1.3 seconds. So now you have the app running. So where you can see the app, where you have 2 options. First is you can click right here, the local web browser, not there, that's just an image. You have to click right here. local web browser, and there you go. As you said, you can add or edit a fruit. You can also get the same link by clicking here. Use this link. It takes you that same app. Now, of course, we don't have the methods to actually add or add the fruit. This is just an /API fruits. The list doesn't have any fruits, so that's what we can expect. So I think Eric was mentioning about watermelon. So if we
Good
do
choice. Yeah.
save, it's not going to do anything because it doesn't have the methods to add the fruit. But don't you worry, we are going to add that watermelon to the list. That's our promise sometimes today. All right, so now that we have that, let's do a Control-C, exit that process, and congratulations. We will keep congratulating you on every step because we are sure you can do it, okay? So let's go to the next step. Now we have to read content from a database from this step, and we add a JPA to this application. So you can see line 65. If I click copy to editor, you add the dependency, and H2 is an in-memory database, right, Eric, for Spring?
Yeah, H2 is an in-memory database, yeah.
Right. So that's just a quick way of, if you want to test your application, you can use an in-memory database rather than maybe spinning up an actual, like a full-fledged database. So we'll add again, that's, if you scroll down on the POM, you'll see there's a section, add H2 dependency, line 130, so copy to editor. So now we're going to the meat of the project where you have to create an entity class. The first one is the fruit class, fruit.java. So if you see source, main, Java, com, we don't have anything yet. That's going to change. So if I click copy to editor, you can also like click here and then copy to editor. It's going to do the same thing. Copy to editor actually opens up the file on the UI and then copies the content. If you like Vim, you can also do, let's say, like a Vim, and then you can copy that file name and add that from the terminal, however you want. You have lots of options. So here we're adding the fruit.java. Has some it has the constructor, it has some methods, as you can see. Now we need to create a repository class for our content, like something that will talk to the database. So it's a middle layer from your source file and talking to your database.
Yeah, one thing to kind of point out there too, Dewan, is that entity class is just standard JPA. There's really nothing Spring related. So any application that you were building in whatever framework that supported JPA would be the same, pretty much.
Yep. And let me open up this link right here on a separate tab, and we'll come back to that later, but that will be handy sometimes later. So next, we have to populate the database with some initial content. There's nothing in the database right now. So if we click here, just some SQL commands, SQL, one of those two. As you can see, we have 3 fruits in the list: cherry, apple, banana, no watermelon yet. Next, who doesn't like testing, right? We have to have a test class. So application test.java, copy to editor. Do you see the application test.java, source, test, Java, com? Yep, we see application test.java. All right, so at this point, we have the necessary structure to run Maven Verify. We have some classes, some methods, and we have a test class that tests those methods. So if we do Maven Verify, now
apparently Maven didn't download the whole internet the first time.
Yes. So I wanted to ask
there's
you,
a little
Eric,
sliver it needs to download. So,
just part of it.
Just part. Is the concept similar to Dockerfile, Eric? Like where it caches all the previous stages? Let's say if I do Maven X command and then Maven Y command, the previous dependencies that Maven downloaded, it only downloads the thing that it didn't download in the previous step. Is that right? Eric?
Yeah, Maven has a cache on the file system that
Mhm.
any dependencies it's already downloaded, it won't re-download. So I think the first time when you ran it, you didn't have a test class. So there was
Yeah.
nothing for it to do for Surefire to do. So it didn't download any of the test scope dependencies. But when you ran verified the second time, it
Yeah.
said, hey, I've got some stuff to do, but I don't know how to compile this stuff. Let me go out and download everything I need.
Correct. And that applies to, let's say, the version as well. So if I have a dependency and I updated the version, it's going to, again, download the newer version, right?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. All right. So as you can see on the screen, we did run the Maven verify, and as expected, we can see test run 5, no failure. So all our tests passed. Woohoo. So that's a good step. Again, congratulations for completing step 2 out of 5. So
You should have like an icon that has like a pat on the back kind of thing, like pat yourself on the back.
You know, actually, on that note, I saw a patent online, pat on the back patent. You can Google right now, like pat on the back patent. So someone actually patented an idea of a device, which like you attach here, and then you move that, and then the mechanical arm that pats you on the back. There's apparently a patent on that.
Okay.
So coming back to the
We're a bundle of useless knowledge. We should go on Jeopardy.
Right.
So coming back to REST. So far you have your application running locally, so no one can access that, right? So other than yourself. So opening up to the internet means you add some REST endpoints so that folks from the internet can talk to your application, see the list of the fruits you have. So for that, we'll start with the fruit controller. So you can see this class has, and again, an empty to-do. So if I click copy to editor, we'll add those methods. It doesn't have anything except /API/fruits, which is just the list. Tongue twister. Okay,
let me throw something else in there too. A lot of people with Spring are familiar with like the thing called auto-wired, and you notice there's no auto-wired on the fruit repository, and you might start like asking why is there no auto-wired, and that goes to what's called field injection versus constructor injection. And although the Spring team doesn't come out and say it, in any of their documentation, they really do recommend constructor injection over the field injection for a lot of different reasons. One, myself as a committer, if you do field injection, they won't merge your code. You have to do it this way as a committer. But there's a couple different reasons why, and if you think about it, passing your dependencies that a class depends on, if you just have them as fields, it makes it really hard as someone who's trying to use that class to know what things do I need to provide this class in order for it to function properly, right? By using constructor injection, it's pretty obvious, right? It's a kind of a self-documenting thing. Plus there's, I don't know how measurable it is, but there is some performance benefit because at runtime, it doesn't have to use reflection to do the injection. You can just call new past the thing and be done with it. So just a little tidbit of information.
No, that's a lot of helpful information. Yeah. So here, if we see the method find all, so you can find this method in the classes we have written. But if you see it, the type of repository variable is fruit repository. So if I see fruit repository, it imports this particular package. And if I look here in the Spring documentation and try to find this method, find all, I can see where it gets the definition of the method. So coming back here, so we added the fruit repository class. Well, we added that before. So here we added fruit controller class. Let me open up fruit controller right here. So we added fruit controller with some to-do to add additional service calls here. So with the empty service calls, we can now again run Maven Spring Boot run. At this point, we're skipping the test because we actually don't have any tests to test the endpoints, which we haven't added. So you can see that JVM is running. I can go to my local web browser and see it here. And if I try to add watermelon at this point, we still can't because we don't have the methods in order to add a fruit. So that's okay. Next, we'll create additional service. So here we can update, create, and delete. So if I click copy to editor, so you can see the post mapping, this.repository.save. So this should let us save any new fruit that we're adding to the list. Eric, do you have any comments on any of these?
No, it looks
Okay.
good. I mean, like anything in software engineering, there's a million different ways you could solve the same problem, and the same holds true in Spring. I mean, there's like, you notice there's like some exception handling and validation handling that's there. That's one way you could do it. There's probably 5 other ways that you could do it as well.
Yep. So I know you all have been waiting eagerly to see the watermelon, Eric's favorite fruit, on the list. So let's see if we can get that working in this try. And this time I'm not going to click this link right here. We can go from this link, which should take us to the same list. All right, so let's see, watermelon. There you go. On a hot summer day, we now have the essential watermelon in the list. And talk about good fruits. Apple in this list is my least favorite fruit. So let me try to remove it.
Okay.
Yes, we are able to remove. So it seems the methods that we added are working. We can see the list, which is just in /API/fruits, and then we can add a fruit. We can even update the fruit, right? So probably we can say red cherry. So we can update the fruit. So if you're watching this live or you're watching this at a later time, we have a challenge for you. So let's say watermelon. If I add it again, it adds a second watermelon. So the to-do for you, if you're watching it at any time now or in future, how do you add a check so that it doesn't add the same fruit to the list? So that's your to-do. All right, so let's do a control C.
My mind's already racing. Challenge accepted. After this, I'm going to have to go off and do that. I'm one of those kinds of people that I can't just
you can't let it go.
I can't just let it go. It'll bother me. Like I won't be able to sleep tonight. It'll just bother me.
He's gonna have the dinosaur.
It'll wake you up in the middle of the night, haunting your dreams, kind of thing.
I only wanted one watermelon. I really like watermelon, but only one at a time. I can't have 2 watermelon. It'll go bad. You can't eat it fast enough.
Now imagine that.
Well, you gotta invite friends.
The dinosaur chasing you with a watermelon, giant watermelon.
There you go.
Okay, so let's clear up the screen, continue to the next step. So all good. I know we've been talking a lot about the local environment and building a Spring app, but now you have to deploy. And let's deploy to the best platform, best Kubernetes platform on OpenShift. Okay, so if you haven't used OpenShift before, let me show you one more scenario. So if I go to learn.openshift.com, I think somewhere at the bottom, you have OpenShift Playground. So you can go to OpenShift Playground and choose whichever version, let's say OpenShift 4.7, and it's going to give you one more 60 minutes sandbox where you can type in different commands and learn about OpenShift. And once you're familiar, you can, all the instructions are here, by the way, but in case you want to get more familiar with OpenShift, you can have that playground. So coming back here, so we have our code right here on this directory. And the first step would be for you to connect to your OpenShift cluster. So since this is a sandbox, we are already connected to the OpenShift cluster. OC who am I will show us like who's the current user. So it shows we are the admin, so we can do a lot of stuff.
Ooh, admin OC delete all dash all dash n dash all.
That sounds like a great idea.
For that we need auth Z. Not only auth N, we need auth Z. Who can do what? All right, so so let's just create a simple project. Let's not cause any havoc. let's say you do something at that OC delete, and then Chris's internet goes down again, right? So we don't want to do that.
Why is it got to be again? It wasn't my fault this time. I can't prevent natural disasters. I'm sorry.
using OC delete commands could cause natural disaster. No, that's not true. Since we're on air.
Chris isn't going to invite me on any more of these things.
I know, right? Like,
okay, so now that you have you are authenticated to the cluster, you have created a project. Let's actually go to the OpenShift Web Console. Oops, let's try again. OpenShift Console.
Should probably mention too, the whole scenario itself is running on an OpenShift cluster. So even like when you're doing LS and you've got that nice terminal and whatnot, you're already on an OpenShift cluster. So
yes,
you're just going to the same cluster, just a different project.
Yes, and probably this will be fixed at a later date. But if you're trying this scenario now, I will suggest you use admin credential to log in rather than developer, because if you are developer, you probably won't be able to switch projects right now because we are using dev project. And let's say if you're a default project, you probably won't be able to switch right now. So if you go from here, administrator, you can see all the projects. Dev is the project we should be on. And now if I switch the perspective to developer perspective, we are in dev. We shouldn't have any resource. It's a clean slate. So first step after you create the project would be creating a database, a PostgreSQL database. So remember, we were using an H2 database in previous steps, but now you can, and that is as simple as OC new app and some environment variables for the username and password. And then you specify this is the image name, OpenShift / PostgreSQL and the version, and you give it a name. So once you do that, let's go back to the topology and you can see now the database is starting up. If you're using OpenShift for the first time, the cyan blue circle means the deployment config or the pods are still starting up. It's not running. And I think the solid blue, yeah, right, like that, it means it's running. So if I hover my mouse, it says it's running. All right, so you can see the database configuration here, source main jcube deployment.yaml. And again, you can navigate from here, or you can just click right here, and it's going to open up, which will show you the DB username, the DB password, and also.
So should we talk a little bit about what jcube is? So like.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So jcube is it's a set of Maven plugins for interacting with Kubernetes platforms, and OpenShift being one of them. So it's a way where you can take your application, your Java application, it's not real specific to Spring, but I just through running a Maven command, deploy that application to a Kubernetes cluster. In this case, we're using the OpenShift Maven plugin because we're dealing with OpenShift. So there's some OpenShift like a deployment config instead of a deployment, and a route instead of an ingress, and all that stuff. And so what you can do is if you go back to your editor there and you go into that source main jcube directory, is you notice this if you scroll up to the top of the editor, that's not a complete, well, actually this one is a complete one, but it doesn't have to be a complete manifest file. It could be just what they call a fragment. So it'll create the jcube plugin when it runs, it'll actually create all the necessary Kubernetes manifests, and it'll look in this source main jcube. And if you've specified anything, so in this case, it's like deployment or deployment config.yaml, it'll apply those on top of whatever it generates. So if you overwrite something like an environment variable section or add some labels or whatever, it'll apply that on top of whatever it generates before it does the actual deployment. And this is kind of the next incarnation. There was the old Fabricate Maven plugin and suite of tools.
Yeah. So
that kind of died on the vine, and this is the new incarnation of that, which reuses a lot of the code, but it's a little bit more structured, because I'll throw my hand out there and say I'm a Gradle fan and not a Maven fan. That this kind of stuff didn't exist in Gradle before. I still don't think it does, but it's getting there because they've done a lot of refactoring and a lot of retooling around how the code is structured. So that's my 2-minute spiel here.
No, that's very important. And also, Eric, like here, I see that for OpenShift Maven plugin, it helps with like building S2I images. So for example, when we do the command we haven't executed yet, but when we do Maven OC deploy, we'll be able to see like how it builds the image before actually deploying it, right? So S2I is one mechanism where OpenShift builds container images right from your source repository. So you don't have to have a Docker file. It's just one of the techniques how OpenShift builds, right? So I can see that OpenShift Maven plugin, it has an integration, if we may say, to build those S2I images.
Yeah, so S2I, I mean, I think the term S2I gets thrown around, and there's really 3 different use cases that we call source to image. There's true source to image, which is like what you just said, where you just give it a GitHub repo or Bitbucket or whatever, and it'll actually take your source, compile it, and then create a container image around it. But in this case, we're actually doing what's called a binary build, where we're going to use Maven on our, and I'm in air quotes here, local environment, which is our Katacoda environment, to produce the Uber jar. And then we'll just tell OpenShift, hey, OpenShift, I've already built that binary, just wrap it in a container image and deploy it for me. And so that's still considered, and again, in air quotes here, S2I.
Yeah.
But it's not actually doing the Maven build. It's just
Right,
taking something
right,
that's
right.
already built. Because I know a lot of organizations, at least where I used to work, a part of our build process, we'd take that jar, that Uber jar, and we'd still publish that to like Nexus or Artifactory or whatever it is that you're using. Because you might want to run that outside of a container somewhere, you know, in some way, shape, or form. But then you need a container image to run it on a Kubernetes platform like OpenShift.
Right, right. And that reminds me of the pre-container era where the jar, actual jar was the deployment artifact. Like you produce the jar, and that's the jar you pushed onto some other VM, and that's what ran the server. But now it's the container, and the container image is what you use to deploy your image.
Yeah.
So
And this is cool too, because like if you had a local, and again in air quotes, if I were doing it on my laptop here, you know, a lot of organizations are so locked down you can't even install a Java runtime, right?
Right.
So assuming you had a Java runtime, but you can't install the Docker runtime, you know, that's forbidden, especially in financial services, which is my background. You can still do this and build container images because the container image part of that is not actually happening on your machine. And so you don't need the Docker runtime for that.
Wow, nice.
Got it. So coming back, so where we were was we logged into the OpenShift cluster. We created a new project called Dev. We created a PostgreSQL database called My Database, and we could see in the topology that you have your My Database, but we don't have the app yet. But before actually creating the app, we again have to, so if you remember the pom.xml, it had lots of to-dos. So in the last 20 minutes or so, we added all those to-dos, but one to-do, or two to-do actually, are left. One of them is the PostgreSQL dependency. So if I click here, it adds the PostgreSQL database, and the final dependency is a health check. So using Spring Boot provides something called actuator, and it exposes like that /health matrix. And if I click here, I think that's
I'm saying what's cool about that, if you're going back to the JCube conversation, is JCube kind of understands it, you know, that your app is a Spring Boot app, and that if you have actuator, it knows that it has health and ready and liveness probe endpoints already built in. So it'll add those to the deployment and the deployment config for you automatically that gets deployed. So you don't have to go do that.
Awesome. So now that our pom.xml is complete, let's actually deploy to OpenShift. Single command. I think there's a Maven package like build, but if you do like deploy does the build and deploy all together. So let's click that. And you'll see
more of the world needs to be downloaded.
More of the world needs to be now it's the other parts of the galaxy being downloaded. And then let's show the topology.
This is actually going to take a few minutes because the container build will take a minute or two to do. So
yeah, but it'll be interesting.
Elevator music.
I mean, I can put on some music if you want us to. I mean, Bobby,
we could talk about my book. We could talk about my
let's talk about your book,
yes,
please.
Yeah, so I don't know if I did it in the introduction, but you know, my background is Spring. I'm a or at least I was for a period of time, a committer, a lot of stuff in Spring Security, but I was a committer and a lot of Spring stuff. And for those who haven't heard of this thing called Quarkus that's out there, I've written a book that's going to be published in August at some point, mid to late August. We're looking at Quarkus from a Spring developer's perspective. So looking at a lot of the conventions like Spring Data JPA and controllers and cloud and Kubernetes and all that kind of stuff, but looking at it from the eye of a Spring developer and kind of showcasing side by side, hey, this is how you would do something in Spring, and this is what it looks like in Quarkus. And by the way, it's not really so different. You know, there's really not a big learning curve to it.
Right.
So
nice.
so
So do we have a
for my
link
stuff.
to the book yet, or do we know where it's going to be when it does come out?
Yeah, unfortunately, we're building that now. It'll be on
Okay.
developers.redhat.com. There'll be a link.
Sweet.
It's free. It's not something we're going to send you to Amazon and make you pay $50 for.
Yeah, it'll be on the ebooks page. I just
It'll
linked in
be
the
on the
chat for
ebooks
everybody.
page.
Yeah. Cool. That'll
Yeah,
be
and
awesome.
it'll be hopefully the end of August. It'll be out.
Beautiful. Yeah,
But
no, I know how books go.
just to keep it on air, Eric did promise me a signed copy of, like a physical copy of the book, a signed physical copy of the book when it comes out.
I've only have a handful of those.
Yeah, we're hoping to do a few printed copies as we start to get back to in-person events. You know, finally, you know, these virtual conferences are kind of, I'm tired of them.
They are what they are. Yeah.
They are what they are. So we're hoping to have printed copies, and, you know, I'll do autograph sessions and whatnot if anybody wants it.
Ooh, autograph sessions. Just have you in the Red Hat booth at the next conference signing books.
That's right. Who's that guy signing books? I got a crowd around me. I must be important, right?
So now
it
that
looks like it's done. Now that we've done
now
my
that
shameless plug.
Build is complete. No, that was a very important plug. Now that the build is complete, part of the commands, you can see like your familiar Docker like commands, or you can see like step 1, 2, like you see using a base image. So you can see like how the image is built in different parts. So once the build is done, we can go back to the topology view, and you can see now the deployment config is there. You can also check from command line. OC rollout status, the name of the deployment config is Spring getting started. So let me clear up the screen, and it should say successfully rolled out. So this is running on OpenShift. This is no longer your local machine. And if we click here, we should see the same fruits app. And let's see if we can add Eric's favorite fruit. Yes, we can. Eric finally can have watermelon on OpenShift. So I think that's the demo piece. There is something even more cooler. Yes, cooler. So let's say this is a 60-minute sandbox, and you want more, right? You want more time. You want more. Yeah, you always want more. So I think my friend is going to add a link in the chat or comments for Red Hat Developer Sandbox. So
it's actually in the lower third, folks. That QR code there will take you straight to it.
Perfect. So Red Hat Developer Sandbox. So you can get started on the sandbox. For 30 days, you'll have an OpenShift cluster. Absolutely no credit card required.
No swiping needed.
No swiping needed. So since I already have the sandbox, if I click and start using my sandbox, it takes me right to my sandbox. And here I already have this deployed, but let me delete the previous deployment just to show how I can also use my sandbox to deploy the application. For the sake of time, I'll keep the database. I'll just keep the database for the sake of time. So if you see at the end of your scenario, you can fork the repository. So for that, there's a nifty little script that my friend Eric written. And if you click here, it's going to give you a code, this code right here. And then you copy the code right here for device activation. I already authorized GitHub before, and I already went through with the forking of the repository. So if I come back, if I close right here, and come here.
You got to follow the instructions. You got to press enter. There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Authentication complete. Press enter to continue. Are you sure you to log out? No. All right. So if I come here,
And I'll just throw there that the credentials that you entered, like for GitHub, are the learn.openshift.com platform knows nothing about that. That's a complete like OAuth call using the GitHub CLI. So there's no access to any of the credentials or anything there.
Right. So you can see that the repository, I have it here forked. And then on my local, so this is my local machine. I have, again, if I do ls-la, I have the clone version of the repository that we just forked. And now I'm going to deploy it on my sandbox environment, which is right here. So let me just copy the actual Maven OC deploy command. I'll copy this one right here.
We should mention too that there are two branches in the repository. The main branch is kind of like where you were starting from at the beginning of the scenario with all the to-dos in there. And then there's also the solution branch, which is what you got at the end of the scenario, you know, what you should have.
Yes. So once you check out, it'll probably be with a master branch. And then if you check out solution, you'll have all the solutions. So you just completed something on learn.openshift.com. You probably don't want to redo the same thing. You just want to deploy. You can check out solution branch. And let's say the project I'm on right now, I'm on Dewan Ahmed -dev. That's fine. I'm just going to deploy on this project. I already have the database, which was created before. So now the same command that we ran before, but this is not on a 60 minutes cluster. This is actually now going to deploy on your 30 days developer sandbox cluster. Similar command for building the S2I process first, and then it'll create the deployment config.
Yeah, I'll just kind of, while that's going, add on that the 30 days it will destroy automatically after 30 days, but even right after that, you can come back and do another one.
Right.
And for another 30 days, no credit card required.
We discourage you from running production like that, though.
You better have a really good Ansible playbook, right, to be able to recreate everything from where it was.
I mean, you need something like load balancers and all kinds of stuff to even make that work, I feel like. So don't do that.
There's some resource constraints and resource quotas.
Yes.
Like you get like, I think 2 or 3 namespaces that you can use that you can't change the name of, and you can only run so many cores or memory workloads or something. I don't know exactly what the quotas are, but there are some quotas that get enforced.
Almost done. Almost done. All right, it's finished. Now the pod is not yet running. It's container creating stage. Let's see, maybe within a few seconds. If I go to the URL right now, the application should be down. And as soon as the circle turns solid blue,
What's kind of, I was just gonna say, what's kind of cool, you can actually go and see what's going on and watch and tail the log in real time.
Yes. All right, so if I refresh the page, there's a familiar application, but this is on a 30-day developer sandbox. All right, so I know I took a bit of extra time. I'm gonna stop sharing right here and let Eric take over.
Yeah,
15
cool.
minutes, Eric. You got this.
15 minutes. I'll talk really, really fast.
Have the dinosaurs start chasing you. That'll help.
Yeah, dinosaur. I gotta get really. I am actually a runner, but I'm a distance runner, not a sprinter.
Not a sprinter, yeah.
I'm in it for the long haul. Not the short distance here.
Yeah.
So that's all kind of cool. What we just did. But one thing that a lot of developers you got to kind of figure out is, okay, I deployed this environment and I tied my app to a database, right? And we did that through environment variables. So how do I take that application and then move it from dev to QA to integration test to smoke test, whatever n number of environments you have until you get to production. And I'm going to use the word environment in air quotes again, because in the old days, an environment was a physical environment. It took weeks, months, years, how you submitted a request and you needed a bare metal server or VM or whatnot. And then God forbid you need a new environment, where everything needs to be wired together. I mean, that, the ops people just, need to send them on early retirement if you start mentioning that kind of stuff. So Kubernetes and OpenShift make that really, really easy. And what I'm going to do is there's actually another scenario here that talks about externalized configuration. And I'm going to kind of blow through some of the setup stuff because it's, essentially the same stuff that Dewan just did. Once this thing, so is my font size good and when everybody can read what I'm doing here?
Go up one more.
One more.
If possible.
There we go. Just waiting for the environment to spin up.
Okay.
Come on. Let me start it again.
Mm-hmm.
Did we break the internet?
It's possible. We've been known to break things on this show. Not the whole internet, but
Here we go. All right. So that's going. It's pulling down the JDK and whatnot. Once that's done, all right, we're good to go. So I'm going to go start. It's the same source repo. There's a bunch of different projects in that source repo. So it's the same source repo, just a different folder within it. I don't know if I can make this bigger, but so essentially we've got we're still dealing with fruits. We've got a fruit controller, except this one's much simpler. It doesn't have all the whiz bang stuff that Dewan was just showing with like the list and being able to do stuff. But what this really showcases is I'm going to read a property from a properties file, and I want to change that property without having to change my applications, kind of simulating as if I was moving my application from one environment to another and hooking up different configuration to it. So we've got, and again, I talked about in the last one, we talked about constructor injection versus field injection. Well, here's the field injection example here. We've got this other bean called message properties, which is a good way to, if you just have like a one-off property, great. Spring has that at value annotation that you can use to inject a property value. But if you need a bunch of properties that are kind of somewhat related to each other and you want to do validation on it, or strong typing, that kind of stuff, you would build a what Spring calls a configuration properties class, and you can see this one has validation, and it makes sure that there's actually a message, a greeting.message variable, and if your application goes to startup and it's not there, it'll fail to start. So it's doing some startup validation that your properties are there. And so when we run it local, again, air quotes here, locally, we have our greeting.message, and you notice it's kind of an injection. Your favorite fruit is, and then the thing that gets injected is what you actually passed in the as a request parameter. So if I run this guy, and I should have run this guy while we were talking because Maven needs to go download the internet.
I'm a theme on this show.
Yeah, it's a theme. Next time it's run the thing before you start talking, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Lesson learned, postmortem. All right, so while that goes, we'll I'll actually open a new terminal. So just to kind of show off a little bit of the Katacoda stuff. You can open new terminals as well, and whatever the active terminal is I think where the command goes. So if I click the command, it goes into the new terminal. So we're kind of doing stuff in the background here. So one thing that you kind of need is with some of this actuator stuff. If the one thing in this project we're using is the Spring Cloud Kubernetes Spring Boot starter, in this case specifically the config starter, which gives us the ability to natively, our application to natively use the Kube API to read config maps and secrets. Right, and those are two object types within Kubernetes. But in order to do that, your project needs a policy. The service account that runs the pod needs a policy that gives it access to that Kube API. So we have to add that. By default, OpenShift doesn't allow that. It doesn't allow the default service account because we're just using all the defaults here. So we've got to add that role to our user. And then we'll create a config map. So in the source here, we've got the source main etc application. We've just got a greeting message that we're going to create as a config map. Oh, because I'm in another terminal. I'm not in the right directory here. Did our thing finish? Yeah, I think finished. So if I run that on this terminal, it created the config map. And if we want to go to the OpenShift console, we can actually see that. What do we say? Admin, always administrator. Give us the most destructive privileges.
Give me root and I'll give you a broken system.
Yeah, and I always promise not to break anything, right? And
Right,
cross my fingers behind my back kind of thing. So if we go to the dev project and we look at our config map, so now there shouldn't be nothing really running here. But we do have a config map. And if you look at the config map, there's actually a whole application.properties file that's embedded in the config map. There's a bunch of ways you could do it. You could do it this way, or you could just specify the property. So I could just have a greeting.message without being part of the file, and that would work just fine. The underlying Spring Boot starter for that, doesn't really care how you do it. At least the last time I checked. And then we're going to deploy this to OpenShift. Again, cue the elevator music.
Mm-hmm.
So how about them Mets, huh?
Yeah, how about the Mets? They doing okay for you this year?
Yeah, I don't know.
I have
I'm not
no
a Mets.
idea.
I gave up baseball a long time ago.
Yeah, I know the Tigers are being awful this year. So, well, not awful, but not up to the standard Detroit is used to. I feel like.
And Dewan from Canada, you must be a hockey guy.
Well,
or is that just a stereotype that we shouldn't apply?
Is that like a really bad stereotype?
Yeah. On the topic of stereotype, I have that. If you want, I can.
That's
bring
fair.
some
I like Tim Hortons. Yeah.
I can bring some poutine as well, and holler to my friend Moose somewhere in my backyard.
So maybe what I'll do here, because we've got some limited time, is I'll just kind of skip to the thing I wanted to talk about. While Maven's downloading the internet again. At the very end of every scenario, all the Spring scenarios, all the Quarkus scenarios, Dewan showed the being able to fork it to your own GitHub and downloading and clone it and use the developer sandbox, which is all cool stuff. One thing that's there as part of the developer sandbox is a what we call code ready workspaces, which is based on the upstream Eclipse Che, which is an IDE. So if you don't even have an IDE on your machine, well, who doesn't have an IDE? But if you don't have an IDE on your machine, or you don't have all the right tooling or the Java versions or all that kind of stuff, you can use the code ready workspaces that's there as part of the developer sandbox to actually develop your applications. And like this Katacoda environment, it's running in the cloud and it's running on the OpenShift cluster. And so you use the same Red Hat account. There's a link here you would click. It takes a minute or so to start it up. So like any good cooking show, I've already kind of put it in the oven and taken it out,
Nice.
in real time here.
Yeah.
So it would actually load the solution. We talked about the two branches. It would load the solution branch, but it would filter, when you've got the repo just cloned, there's a bunch of projects in there. So that would actually filter it to the one that you're actually working on in that scenario. So the whole source code is there. You can do all the same commands. There's this nice little thing that's pre-configured for you with all these different tools. If I want to build the app, I can just click it and it'll go. And again, I think I already did it. Although it does have an idle time. If you leave it idle for, I don't know what the timeout is, but the pods will stop. But it should have, notice it didn't have to re-download the internet. It does have persistent storage. So even if your workspace stops, as long as you don't destroy it and you restart it, any changes you made are still there on the file system because all the persistent storage is attached. So you see it build, I could do an OpenShift deploy, I could run it and then in air quotes again locally against my local machine. I think it'll actually fail because it's looking for a Postgres database. Maybe it uses H2. I forget. I built the scenario, but I can't remember what I did. Oh, no, it actually works. And if you notice, it's got this little, hey, I see that there's something running on 8080. You want to open it. I can either open it in this little preview thing that comes up over here, or I can just have it open a new tab and voila, I've got my thing built, make it a little bigger. I like watermelon. All right, I can say, yep, your favorite fruit's watermelon. But what's cool, what we wanted to show as part of the scenario, now that it's actually deployed, if I go back and I run using the not local web browser, I actually wanted to go to the OpenShift console by clicking here. And I've got the same thing. If I say watermelon. You see it's greetings. You've picked watermelon as your favorite fruit. If I go back and I actually edit this config map, so instead of greetings, I say bonjour. Do you speak French up there?
I know enough French to be dangerous.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I know all the
Bonjour.
slang words that all my friends have taught me, right?
Nice.
So I can save the config map, and if I come back here and I instead of watermelon, I say banana. You say now it says bonjour because it's picking up the change. I didn't even have to restart my app. It's picking up the change.
Nice.
And so you could see as I started deploying the same app in multiple namespaces with the same config map, just with different values, it would, pick it up, or even pick it up on the fly. That being said, there's always the question: is this a good thing to do? And you need to be careful about what things you're going to change at runtime on the fly, right? Because your application as a whole is your app that you deploy that's static, and your configuration, which is at runtime. And the combination of those two forms like a versioned view of your application. And if you start changing things on the fly, how do you make sure that those changes get back into source control and configuration drift and all that good stuff that we could have a whole separate conversation on? So I think that's what we wanted to showcase here. And look at that, 3 minutes.
Amazing. Not just a martial arts ninja.
I don't climb walls and I don't wear, well, I guess I do wear masks, right, these days. Not the type of ninja mask you're thinking about, but
Yeah, that's a good point. All right. Well, thank you, Dewan and Eric. This was awesome to see and demo and everything. If there's any questions after the fact, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter at Chris Short or short@redhat.com, and I will forward your message to the right people. But yeah, thank you for demoing this today, Dewan and Eric. This was a great stream. Really appreciate it.
It's our pleasure, and thanks, Chris and Bobby and all the folks making the show always as awesome.
yeah,
Awesome.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, no problem. Anytime. Thank you.